My name is Matthew Sparazza.
I'm Father Sam Kachuba.
And today we have with us Clare Morrell. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Is it Morrell?
It's Morrell.
All right, perfect. Clare Morrell. She is a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and director of its Technology and Human Flourishing Project. I want to hear about that. I know you're here for a book, but I want to hear about that. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, the New York Post, Newsweek, National Review, The Hill, so many more. Veritas Catholic Network. Morrell consults legislators on technology policy and has helped to draft legislation to protect children online. She and her family live out their tech exit life. That's a preview of the episode, Tech Exit. Life together in Washington, D.C. Clare, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. Now, Father Sam, I know that... So Father Sam is the one who introduced me to the book. So I'm going to defer to him to begin the episode because I know how much he loves this book. I also love this book, but I love I shouldn't say I love like a sixth of the book. It's just that I haven't read the whole thing yet. Right? I'm sure I will love the rest of the book.
The 1/6 of the book that he's read,
but what
he
I've
really
read
loves.
thus far.
Yeah,
exactly.
thing.
You're catching my
great.
drift. So, Father, I'll defer to you. You can go ahead.
Okay, let's just get into it. So, Clare, I think I started to recognize my own need to break away from screens and everything quite a while back, and started discovering that the best thing was if I could go someplace where there was no internet access or cell phone service. My favorite thing is to go to the most remote places and just completely be disconnected, and how healing that was for me. And if I could take a week and do that, it was just such a good reset, such a good disconnect. But each time I would do that over the course of the last 10 years, I was finding just more and more I wanted more of it on a regular basis. So I gradually started pulling away from things like social media. And then increasingly, as I've been serving as a pastor and watching as families in my parish are dealing with cell phones, smartphones, whether or not to give their kids social media, whether or not to give their kids smartphones at all, the pressure that's on them all the time. Like, my kid has to have a phone because otherwise they're going to be total social outcasts. They're going to look so weird, and the kids are so pressured by all of that. I said, there's just got to be something else. So I start reading things like The Anxious Generation. You start reading things like Family Unfriendly. And then along comes The Tech Exit, a practical guide to freeing kids and teens from smartphones. And I said, I need to read this book. And you're speaking my language. So
Oh, good.
That's the background, because I am coming to a more and more personal conviction that I need as much as possible to break away from all of this stuff. And I say that as somebody who uses a smartphone and all this other stuff. So reading this was an eye opener for me, even on some personal levels, and really, really very helpful. So can we just get into, what are we talking about with the tech exit? And I love the idea and the title. Tell us what's happening here.
Yeah, no, thank you. So I wrote this book. I think you kind of summarized it because I've been in the tech policy space for the last 5 years, but I was frequently just asked by parents for my advice on a personal level. Just, okay, you're studying the harms. So what do I do? At what age should I give my kid a smartphone? When is it okay to go on social media? And my research had convinced me the harms were so bad, and the current strategies the tech companies were holding out to parents of time limits and parental controls were just deficient. They were not effectively protecting kids. And so I was convinced that the only way to really protect our kids was a total opt-out, a total tech exit from smartphones, social media, interactive screens during childhood and through the teen years. But when I would share this with parents, they were kind of incredulous. They're like, literally every other kid in my child's class has a smartphone. And I personally had not yet navigated the pressures of the tween and teen years. I have 3 children, but they're all 5 and under. And so I realized that these parents needed answers. And I wanted to kind of prove to myself that this lifestyle was possible. And if so, how had other families and parents done this successfully? How had they made it through even the teen years? And so the tech exit is really the culmination of that work. I interviewed dozens of families, heard of hundreds more. And really, I became overwhelmingly convinced that not only was a smartphone-free childhood necessary, but this was actually possible. People were doing this. I think the numbers are growing by the day because the evidence just continues to come out how harmful these things are. And really, for every parent that opts out, it makes it easier on the next parent. And so I'm like, this is a movement, a groundswell movement of parents just saying, no, like we're not going to accept that this is the status quo anymore. And so the book is fundamentally positive. I wanted to give parents like, here are the practical step-by-steps of how you do this. It's never too late to reverse course if you've already given these things to your kids. You don't need to feel bad and just feel this sense of inevitability of like, oh no, we made a bad decision. I guess that's it. A lot of families have successfully reversed course. They've detoxed from the screens and sustained this lifestyle over the long term, and you can follow in their footsteps. And so the book is really very much a step-by-step practical guide, and it really has a very positive message of hope that this is possible. Many other families are doing this. You can join them, and it's not as hard as it might seem.
So I know that it's positive. I agree. It really is like it's so positive and so encouraging to people to hear this. But can we just go negative for a minute? I know this is like a Catholic podcast and it's supposed to be positive.
That is not where I thought you were going.
Look, we're not K-Love. We're not positive encouraging. This is the tangent. We're going to go negative here. Okay.
We are critical.
Yeah. Go negative with me here. And let's talk about, all right. The smartphone is an amazing tool, obviously, and there's tremendous things that do come from it, but there's also a lot of harms that are present there. So maybe we could look at what would be the top harms that you see present there. And then precisely because there are these harms that are present, the tech companies themselves, the smartphone manufacturers themselves have started to introduce something to mitigate those harms. And you said it just before that those are all deficient. Mm-hmm. Let's dig into why those things are deficient and how they're just not working. And I know that's negative, but that's okay.
No, you kind of do have to start with the negative, right? Like in order to understand the need, convince me if I'm a parent, convince me why I should do this. Why are the current methods not working? So just to kind of briefly give an overview of the harms with smartphones, the first most underlying basic point is that these phones and the social media apps and all these apps that are on them are addictive by design. They're not neutral. They're not just for you to come use them as you want. They want to maximize addiction for your time, attention, and data. And so especially for kids and their developing brains, they're very prone to the addictive effects. And what I was seeing in the brain research is that time limits really are no match for this addictive design, because even a short amount of time on an app or the smartphone creates a very strong, constant craving for more. So it gives this spike of dopamine, an artificially high level of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in the brain, gets a little burst of pleasure. But dopamine doesn't produce satisfaction or fulfillment. It actually just creates wanting. It creates craving to do it again. And so as soon as you get off, the brain immediately crashes into a dopamine deficit state. And that's true if you're on for 5 minutes or an hour. It goes into that deficit state and you're going to constantly crave more. So the time limit's never enough. Even a short amount of time is extremely addictive, especially if that's a daily time limit. That accumulates over time. They become used to this artificially high level of dopamine they're getting every day. In the real world, what happens then over time is the brain becomes desensitized to real world pleasures. It means things that used to give that pleasure in real life don't anymore. The brain has become habituated to such artificially high levels. So the addictive design is like the most kind of important harm to pay attention to. But then these apps are just portals to the internet, where a lot of bad actors are looking to prey on children and where dangerous content can easily come into a child's feed without them even looking for it. And that's where then the companies advertise these parental controls. But the problem is, again, there are hundreds and thousands of apps on an individual device, like accessible to a child. And each of those apps has its own in-app browser, its own portal to the internet. So there's literally thousands of portals to the internet on a single device for a parent to try to shut down. And even innocuous sounding apps that are designed for children have these in-app browsers where a child could be getting onto Pornhub inside of an app and the parent would never even know. Or they could be chatting with strangers through like a language learning app, because all of these apps have kind of incorporated these social media features. And so the real problem with the controls is they don't actually put parents in control. The company's algorithms really determine what a child sees on the feed and the design of the app, and there's no impact on the parental control on that. And they can't effectively shut everything down. Some of the worst apps, like Snapchat, TikTok, they just don't allow third-party external parental controls any access into their apps. And so kids can be seeing really dangerous things on these feeds, or clicking in through to dangerous websites, all with inside an app. And a parent would never know because the parental control can't see into what's happening inside the app. And so those kind of two buckets of harms, the addictive design that underlies all of this, that's really, the screen time limits are no match for. And then how deficient the parental controls are from actually effectively shielding kids from predators and dangerous content that they can be exposed to so easily through these apps, really convinced me the total exit was necessary.
Okay.
Right. It's the medium is the message, right? So it's not just what you actually encounter on it. It's what it does to you.
And it really shapes a child's worldview too. I think, especially if you're thinking about Catholic Christian parents, we think about discipling our children, raising them in the faith. And I think anytime you hand a smartphone to a child, that it's really undermining that work, because people opposed to your worldview. And then even like you were saying, the actual design of the app, it's inherently self-focused and self-centered. The app teaches you that life, and the purpose of life, is for your personal pleasure and entertainment. And the algorithm just feeds up more and more of the things it thinks you will like. And it's just inherently self-focused, like put your picture out there and see how many likes or followers you get. It's all these metrics based on self and self-expression, and just self-pleasure. And it's not teaching kids to love God and love others. Like you were saying, the medium is the message, and the message it's sending is that the world revolves around you and that life is just for your entertainment and amusement. And so I do think that there's a danger, and I think sometimes Christian parents can subtly fall into this thinking, well, if I just put all the parental controls and make sure that they're not accessing bad content, these things are safe to use. But as I'm saying, the underlying design itself is dangerous because it's addictive, and it really caves a child in on themselves instead of helping lift their eyes up to see their relationship with God and the world around them and the other people that He's placed in their lives. And so I think that is something we have to pay attention to, especially as thinking about this as Christian parents, that the design of the technology does not match the worldview we are trying to impart to our children.
And Father Sam, you can go.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
So I was just thinking that it gets in the way of the development of the proper worldview, but then also, and I've talked to Father Sam about this as well on previous episodes, that it gets in the way of the development of an interior life. So if you are accustomed to using a smartphone, or I mean, you tell me what you think, but I would throw in other screen devices as well. Like I would include computers and so the utilization of YouTube regularly. But also, like, if you're just addicted to hockey, I'm not speaking from personal experience, or football, or
He's
whatever.
Very much speaking from personal experience.
whatever sport you'd like to throw in there, Father Sam. Okay, right. But you're used to receiving things instantaneously. Like that teaches you that silence and waiting in prayer isn't an option.
That's right.
And so like it gets in the way of even the practice of faith. What do you think of that?
Oh, no, 100%. Yeah. Kids don't learn how to be still or like practice solitude or self-reflection, or yes, like you're saying, that inner prayer life, communing with God, having time to self-reflect and just to be still with their own thoughts. And a teacher was actually saying she teaches writing, and she's seen changes in the students over the past several years because she'll teach the writing skills, and then it gets to a certain point in the lesson where she says, okay, now it's your turn to write. And you need to just stare at the paper until an idea strikes you, and then you're going to write something. And it might take some time, like your brain thinks, and then it'll have something to write. She said her students feel like something's wrong with them, this feeling of being like empty-headed, not having anything kind of constantly being stimulated at them, they think something has gone wrong, that they actually don't know how to be still with their own thoughts and actually give the time to think and reflect, which then turns into writing and creativity. And so I know other creative musicians and artists have mentioned this too. They're worried about even kind of the future of arts and creativity, because a lot of creativity comes from boredom and from time by yourself to have ideas and to have original thought. And I think we're really losing that because kids are constantly stimulated. And like I was saying, with the kind of desensitization to real world pleasures, the same thing kind of happens in other areas of the brain. They're just being underutilized. And so they don't get developed. Those critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, the ability to be bored and to have time to self-reflect and to be still and practice solitude are being lost because these kids can be constantly entertained by things. You know, parents are handing the toddlers the iPad. And so from a young age, they've learned to view boredom as a bad thing, or as solitude and silence as something is wrong, because they're used to that constant stimulus of the screen.
So let me, I guess perhaps it's worth noting that, like, I agree with everything you're saying, but I'm going to challenge it anyway.
It's okay.
So I guess, like, personal background, right? Because I have benefited from the internet, right? Like, let's throw that out there. And I think most people have. But I have benefited from the internet insofar as when I was in college, I struggled with my faith tremendously. I think that I was given like a mediocre catechesis in Christianity, and walked away for a bit. That's not a dig on Father Sam. Father Sam was my high school chaplain. People who listen to the show know that.
You're welcome.
He was my lifeline. He wasn't the thing that cut me off. So now that's set out there. Okay. But regardless, I feel like in many ways I was catechized through the internet. And I mean that positively. Like, I don't know if you know who Father Mike Schmitz is, but he had a podcast called Bible in a Year. And admittedly, I'm speaking about Father Mike Schmitz from before this podcast, but you know, I learned a lot about Catholicism and Christianity by watching, you know, this priest and this debate and that debate on YouTube. And so I learned a lot about my faith via what I would call YouTube a form of social media. Maybe it's like a bit less traditional form of social media, but I would call it social media.
I think that's right.
So how do you integrate these two ideas, which is that social media is terrible for you, and yet it changed my life dramatically for the good, and also others. I'm not alone in this, right? Right. So how do you integrate these two ideas?
Wait, before we go there, can I throw in an additional question? Sorry.
Sure. No, that's good.
Before we jump to the social media part, because I think it's really important. Claire, you're not just talking about social media though. You're talking about the technology itself that's inherent in the way that the smartphone or the tablet is designed, maybe distinct from the way a computer is designed. Because I always feel like a computer has more functionality as a tool. Unless you want to get into gaming and coding and things like that, in which case it becomes a little bit different. But for the most part, how do you use your computer? Use it as a word processor. This is where I can type things. This is where I send my emails, and that's kind of the primary.
I, for one, am not addicted to Microsoft Excel.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
No, nobody's like longing to spend more time on spreadsheets. That's true. But there's something about the way that the smartphone is set up. And I think that was something that your book really highlighted for me that I hadn't quite realized before. The entire way that it's designed is to be addictive, not just the individual apps that are designed to be addictive, but the very technology behind the smartphone itself. And that leads, I think, to the social media stuff becoming as addictive as it is. So
yes.
That's just like the part that I want to throw in there that maybe can now inform how we talk about social media. But like anything else there about this is something that should be a tool, right? Not social media. I mean, like the smartphone. This is to have this kind of technology and this kind of computing power in such a tiny little rectangle that fits in your pocket should be an amazing thing. But it's not a tool.
No, and there's a lot of differences between the smartphone, the tablet, and the computer. And a lot of it is just even how it's laid out. It's very bright, it's very colorful, it's very easy to swipe and switch between apps. everything sends you notifications. Now, I realize adults can do lots of things like turn the notifications off, but I'm just saying the default is it's going to ping you all the time. So it's like having a supercomputer in your pocket, but it's way more addictive because it's giving you constant access to the internet in your pocket. Like, not like, oh, I need to go to my computer and do this thing for this specific purpose. My computer's at my desk, and then I leave and go do the next thing. This is like the internet traveling with you 24/7. So part of it is just the sheer size and portability of the tablet and the smartphone make it more addictive, because something is more addictive if it can travel with you. I mean, it literally is constantly reminding you of its presence just in your pocket, the weight of that phone. And then, it's the pinging, the notifications, and it's just the easiness of switching between apps and tasks and how it can just quickly suck you down these different rabbit holes. And I forget what study I was reading that basically said people like now spend like 30 seconds usually is like the average amount of time on one app before they switch to the next thing. And so it's just like diminishing our attention spans. And I think the computer certainly, like you kind of raised this, Matt, like could have certain benefits, but also challenges, because computers also connect to the internet. They can also access social media websites. They can access YouTube. So there's certainly dangers you could get into on a computer. It's a lot more difficult. The computer is not kind of pinging you constantly to do these things. It's generally larger and just more difficult to carry around. You're not going to like pull your computer out in public, like, let me check my email. You can kind of leave it and go to it and use it purposefully. And so I even try to distinguish between this in the book. I certainly think there are beneficial uses of the internet that a family could intentionally train a child on, especially as they age, in a public and purposeful manner, where the computer is in a very public place and where the parent is guiding them to go on the internet for a very specific purpose. And maybe it is letting your child watch a theology video on YouTube for 30 minutes. But then there's a limit to it. And it's like, okay, you're going to watch that video. That's the purpose. That's why you're going online. And then you're going to get off. Because YouTube, like you said, can also really quickly suck kids down dangerous rabbit holes with all its algorithms. Like, it's infinite. It just constantly is going to feed you another video. So there's no natural cutoffs. So I do think there are some dangers still with a computer because of the internet, but it's a lot easier for a parent to teach a child to use a computer as a tool with all the other things you can do intentionally on it, like learning to code or learning to use Microsoft Word or Excel or PowerPoint, or even do research on the internet for a school-related assignment. In a way that's public and purposeful. It's just a lot more difficult to do that on a smartphone because, again, it travels in your pocket, makes it inherently difficult for a parent to truly oversee what a child is doing on it all the time. And it is filled with distractions. Like, it is meant to suck you in. It doesn't want you to come use it as a tool and then put it away. It wants you to spend as much time on it as possible. And it's just too easy to switch between things, be constantly drawn into things, and then it just constantly reminds you of things just because of the notifications. And I think also we should mention the texting, particularly for phones, like that even for teens, like just forget social media, like the texting, the group texting, the constant messaging on the phones is also really addictive and can be really dangerous for kids. And so I think that's another unique kind of aspect to the harm of the smartphone.
I mean, it's interesting too because the unfortunately computers, are intended to resemble phones more and more, like from a software perspective. So like the iPad looks like a Mac now. If you look at the newest iPad software, and the Mac software looks like an iPhone. So it all just looks like an iPhone basically. I mean, they have a new feature on the latest Mac software that you can pull your iPhone screen up on your Mac and just have it permanently open.
That's
so like,
terrible.
It's terrible. It's terrible. I admit, so I don't have an iPhone anymore. So because like I work for a media company, right? In evangelization, and knowing that I would be spending time on YouTube and in all of these, various capacities, I have a Wise phone now, so I actually purchased a phone that doesn't have access to social media. And I do think, I guess I don't say that to brag, although maybe I'm bragging a little bit, Father Sam. I don't know why.
Brag a little bit. No, brag a little bit.
Directed to Father Sam.
That's good. You should.
But rather to suggest that there are actual options for this. Like there are through this
Yeah.
particular phone, which we are not sponsored by, but they're free to sponsor us. Although I'm sponsoring them for free, sort of, so I don't know why they would.
I have a Wise phone too.
Do you?
That's the
Okay,
phone
yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
I switched to the Wise phone probably a year and a half ago.
Father Sam, join the club. Come on, man.
It's
Um,
great. I love
it is
my
great.
Wise
moving
phone.
in that direction.
Yeah. And the thing is, you can access certain digital goods. Like I have Spotify on my Wise phone, so I'm able to listen to podcasts and music. But you can't get on social media, and so like there is a way to maintain some kind of access to the hardware without having access to the software, right? So like the tech exit
that's right.
as an adult, right? Perhaps more specifically than as a child, right? Because as a child, it seems like the answer is get as little technology in your life as possible if you're a parent, raising a kid, but in their lives as possible. But as an adult, like I need access to my computer. There's no way around it, I support my family. If I don't have a job, we don't have medical insurance, and so I need to be able to access a computer and to an extent an iPhone for social media because we're trying to promote a podcast. Although I'd be actually interested to hear your thoughts about that because Father Sam and I have had a debate as to whether or not we should even put things on social media. Right? Are you a part of the problem? And I assure you, we won't feel too terrible if you tell us yes. But also if you tell us yes, I'm going to remind you that you're a guest on the show. So
we're going to promote your book no matter what.
Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, there's a fine line, right? Like I'm super anti-social media for kids. I think there are ways adults can use social media as a tool. Like I do use some social media to promote my professional work, but I don't have any of those apps on my phone, and I'll just go on it on my computer for 5 minutes to post and then I get off.
Right.
And I've heard that from lots of people that it's better if you approach it as like, I'm going to be a content creator on here. Like I'm going to put good content out and then I'm going to get off. I'm not going to get sucked down all the rabbit trails that other things are trying to feed me. Because I think most people actually come to social media primarily as consumers and they're just looking to scroll. And so I think there's ways to approach using social media in ways that are creative and contributing good things for people to come across or for adults to have conversations about. But yeah, and I would just say, adults are not immune from the addictive effects of smartphones. And I talk about this in my book that also primarily as parents, like we are the greatest models for our kids of the kind of technology use we want them to have as adults. And if they just walk around seeing their parents glued to iPhones, like they're just going to think that that's what adults do. And they're going to desire that. And it's just going to make the battle even harder to say no because they're like, well, but you're on your phone all the time. So like, won't that be what I do as an adult? And so I think we do actually, it does kind of start with us. Like adults need to examine our own tech use and our own tech practices. And it doesn't necessarily mean every adult needs to give up their smartphone, but they certainly need to make them less addicting. I would just say to ruthlessly eliminate apps. If you don't need to do it on your phone, wait and do it on a computer so that you're not constantly being pulled away on the phone. Distance yourself physically from your device, especially when you're with your kids. Like put it in a phone box. We have a family phone box where we deposit our phones. So it's out of sight and out of mind because it is. When it's on you, it's just a lot easier to turn to it. And we don't even realize we're doing it. They're incredibly habit forming. But then I am encouraged that in the last several years, there's just more good alternative phones available. So you don't have to feel pressured into getting a smartphone, even as an adult, where you're like, I need certain things to participate in society. Like I have to now pay for my parking with like the Park Mobile app or navigate around with Google Maps. And so that's what I like about the Wise phone. There's more options available that give you what I would say are truly tools to use if you need Uber or Venmo. I'm not going on there to scroll my time away. I truly approach those apps for very specific purposes. Then they serve the purpose and then I get off the app. And so I think the Wise phone does this well, where it offers certain things that are tools and doesn't offer apps that are going to distract you, addict you. So there's no gaming apps, there's no social media apps, there's no internet browser on the phone, which I really appreciate. And there's no email. And I know that's controversial. A lot of adults, I think, are very tied to our email.
It's a good thing.
But I think it's good. I just intentionally check my email on the computer. Yeah. People who know they need to reach me have my cell phone number if they need to call me or text me. But then they know that I'll get back to them the next time I'm on my computer for emails. So, and I think that's how it used to be. That's how email used to be. Everyone just had it on their computer. And we've now come to expect instant responses to email because now we assume everyone should have it on their phones.
Mm-hmm. Father Sam, do you remember the comment you made to me about the BlackBerry once?
Yeah, the BlackBerry is the reason that we all feel like we're obliged to do this, because at some point they introduced the BlackBerry, and all it did was it eliminated the possibility that you could leave work.
Yes.
Because it meant that no matter what, you were always taking work with you. And then we did the same thing with the smartphone. We just made it even easier to constantly email.
Even worse. That's right.
Yeah. And so it really does become difficult to disconnect. When I first became pastor here, actually, it was one of the big struggles that I had. I started to realize that I had not done anything with my notification settings at all, ever. And I started to realize that every single time my phone buzzed, I was becoming anxious. Like physically, I could feel anxiety. If my phone buzzed for any reason, it could be a text message, it could be an email, it could be nothing. It could be like a calendar reminder. It could have been the weather updating itself or something. Everything.
ESPN telling you that the Mets lost once again.
Again. Yeah. Yeah. Again, granted, that's bad news that I'm used to getting. It doesn't make me anxious to hear that, right? But every single thing was driving me nuts. And then the issue was that I could see the little preview of the emails that were coming in. So I could read the first line, but I couldn't read the whole thing. And just being able to see those first few words, I would get into this thought of, oh no, this person's mad, or this is something that somebody's upset about, or this is urgent. And it was almost never urgent. And if it was somebody who was upset, they weren't upset at me. They were letting me know that they were upset at somebody else, and they wanted me to mediate. And I had to get to that point of just saying, I gotta cut all this out. So like, I love your idea, Claire, about ruthlessly deleting apps, getting rid of all of those different push notifications, just canceling them, turning them off because they're not helping us. But then, whenever possible, just using this for the sake of having, like, part of the reason that I keep the smartphone is because my calendar is a shared calendar, and this way my staff can add things to the calendar for me when they need to, and I can see it relatively quickly. And so when I'm talking to somebody and they say, Father, can I come in and meet with you at this time? I can say, let me check, and I will schedule an appointment right there, but I can see my most up-to-date calendar. And that way it just makes it that much easier. But even that, if I'm really honest, that's a level of availability that I don't necessarily need to have. I can say, I have to go to the office and check the calendar. I'll let you know. It's not that hard, and it's not that foreign. And this is kind of how human beings have functioned for millennia. Until extremely recently.
The Wise Phone has Google Calendar on it.
Yeah,
so.
But we are such a tiny
the Wise Phone
blip
does
in
have
history.
Google Calendar. Yeah.
Oh, okay. We're such a tiny blip in history.
Yeah. I do think it's worth asking the question, like, we've tried to make everything basically like frictionless and like instant. And is there like value in like actually having pauses or like little things you kind of have to jump over to get to the next step just to like slow us down? And I even feel like the calendar, my husband makes fun of me for this, but I am like religious about the paper calendar for our family on the wall. And if it's not on the paper calendar, it's not happening. And I have to always go home and check it before I can give a response to someone. So like, can you do this thing? I'm like, I'll get back to you once I get home, and I check my calendar. I do have some things on my Google Calendar, but I mainly keep that work related because I think the practice of actually having a family calendar, it's a very helpful communication tool between me and my husband. And then our children now are starting to understand what's on the calendar. But I actually like the step where I actually have to pause and I can't give someone an immediate answer, because it also helps me like think about it and talk to my husband. Like, is this the best idea? Like, should we do this or not? Like, there's more of a conversation before I'm kind of immediately giving a yes. And then I'll assess the best time and I can get back to that person. But it adds steps in. It's obviously not as easy as just like instantly scheduling things on the calendar on my phone. But I kind of like the practice of actually having more time to make decisions that I think used to just be more automatically built into things that we were doing. And now we've just kind of accepted a culture of instantaneous. And like, are we losing something through that, through not having actually time to process or think about things more?
I think the answer is yes. We're definitely losing something. I think you're very much onto something here, that we're losing that. But do you think maybe that's also affecting the way that adults are interacting with their kids and parenting their kids? Now, obviously, I'm not a parent myself, but I see parents constantly. I see families constantly. I'm around them all the time, and I think that. Just like you're saying before, we as adults have to kind of model the behavior that we want the children to imitate. So we have to show them by our own use of technology, by our own use of smartphones, the internet, whatever it might be. Here's how to use it as a tool, how to use it appropriately and responsibly. And here's the expectations and the parameters for it. Well, if we always have that instantaneous sort of approach to things, we've got to get this done, that there's no time to pause, there's no time to think, there's no time to say, let me get back to you. What does that do for the kids? The kids start to believe and start to think that way because their parents are thinking that way. The adults in their life are thinking in this instant gratification, let's get this taken care of right away, sort of a pathway. If the kids start to learn that, does that then contribute to, the rise of just over the years that I've been a priest, I've seen we went from helicopter parents to tiger moms to steamroller parents to, like, we've seen all of these things happening, and all of it points to the idea that parents won't let their kids solve their own problems because it takes kids too long to solve their problems because the kids have to learn. They have to learn how to have conflict or learn how to not have things go perfectly. So the parents are like, I can solve this in one email, or I can solve this instantly by changing this on the calendar. Let me handle it. And there's no problem then the kid has to face. So let's get into the why all of this stuff is tough on kids.
Oh, no, totally. Yeah. No, I think everything you just said makes a lot of sense. And a lot of this too, like, this is what Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, was about, is that all of this kind of this medium of technology, the nature of social media, the instantaneous nature of all this stuff, I think is incredibly anxiety inducing for kids and what they're being exposed to. I mean, it's like the whole world's problems are now kind of being thrust at kids through the internet, through social media. And we're placing a lot of adult-like content and adult-like responsibilities on kids at a very young age because we've given them a very powerful tool that they're not actually mature enough to operate yet. They don't have self-control. It's not fully developed, and that part of your brain is not fully developed till age like 25. So they don't have emotional regulation, impulse control, self-control, and we're kind of handing them this tool that actually erodes their ability to develop it. It kind of overstimulates the instant gratification part of the brain. And so that part of the brain responsible for self-control remains underdeveloped and is actually kind of stunted in its development. And so, I don't want to end on the negative note just to say that, but it's possible to choose differently. And we were just talking about the Wise phone, but I feel like the biggest kind of misconception I hear from parents is they think that, first of all, kids need to stay in constant touch with them. Like, I think a lot of this is because parents want constant contact with their kids, and so they feel like they need a smartphone. So first of all, kids don't need that. And you can really delay the age of first cell phone. But then maybe they're in high school now and they are moving around more independently. You don't have to give in to the smartphone. There are better alternatives available that can actually teach a child genuinely to use a phone as a tool for communication, which was what it was originally designed to do, without those distractions for addiction that are going to overpower, they're developing self-control. And so, there's many phone options available, especially good ones for kids are like the Bark phone, the Gab phone, the Pinwheel phone. I would say the Wise phone's probably better set up for adults because some of those other phones I mentioned, like the Pinwheel phone, are more customizable and parents can kind of set more parameters and controls on them. But the point is just there's options available. Don't just opt for the smartphone. And if possible, just try to delay the age of first cell phone really as long as you possibly can.
Yeah.
So, you want to go, Father Sam?
I do.
Okay.
If that's okay.
Yeah, you go.
So I think you're right. Delaying the age of first cell phone is huge. But as we're looking at these things, parents can do it, and we want to build them up so they can know that they can do it, but also to like equip them with the studies, with the data, with the information behind all of this. Like we know now why you have to wear a seatbelt in a car, and why wearing a seatbelt makes a huge difference for your safety. And we all do it without even thinking. But there was a time when nobody thought seatbelts were necessary. This is a ridiculous infringement on my rights and my freedoms as a good American. If I want to ride around and throw my kids in the back of the pickup truck, it'll be fine. But we know that we should have seatbelts. Once upon a time, we didn't think at all about tobacco products and smoking or chewing tobacco or anything. And now we know that there's a danger. If as an adult you want to take on that danger, that's okay. But children are not to be exposed to that danger. Can you talk to us a little bit about the studies that they've done on all the different social medias? And is there a single study? This is a leading question. I'm sorry. I think you have a background in law, and so I'm not supposed to ask leading questions. That's leading the witness.
That's okay.
But that's okay. It's fine. Is there a single study that has ever said that social media is good for young people, for minors, for children?
Oh, that's such a good question. And yes, I feel like often people are always like, oh, but there's, you can't prove the social media is causing this. And it's like, yeah, but show me a study that shows that there's clear benefits from social media for kids. Not that I can name, honestly. I feel like I read a lot of this literature and the studies are just overwhelming. Like, social media causes anxiety. Social media causes depression. It causes these sleep issues in kids. Even just the smartphone. There's more studies been done on the smartphone. Like the age of first smartphone kind of correlates with poor mental health as a young adult. Like this longitudinal study basically found kids who got smartphones younger had worse mental health outcomes as adults. In particular, their like rate of suicidality or like suicidal thoughts was like way higher the younger they got a first smartphone. And so it's not even just social media. It's also the age that they're getting the phone is leading to worse outcomes over time. Like I try to explain this to parents. It's not just like your kid's going to be anxious now. Like there's cumulative long-term effects to the kind of effect that the impacts the technology is having on their development, both the kind of physical brain development and then also their emotional and mental health development. The last thing I'll mention is a study out of University of North Carolina in 2023 did actually a kind of longitudinal study over time of the effects of checking social media. So not even just like being on social media or the exposure to the content, just the habit of checking social media and what that did to the brain over time. And they found that kids who were habitual checkers of social media during the day showed divergent brain development over time. They became more sensitive to kind of social rewards than their peers, because teens kind of go through a period of development where they become extremely sensitive to kind of social feedback from their peers. It's a very normal process of development, but social media is hijacking that. And so these kids who were habitually checking social media during these kind of really critical development years, later in their teen years, they're like 17-year-olds, they're like overly sensitized to that kind of social peer feedback, whereas peers who were not checking as frequently kind of follow a normal path of development and they're not as sensitized to like what other people are thinking about them all the time as the kids who are checking social media. So it is doing something to the brain and it can have effects over time. So those are just some of my kind of studies I go to when I'm talking to parents about the dangers.
Yeah. It seems so evident that there's no good reason to have kids on social media for sure. And that brings us then to the little discussion that Matt and I have been having about social media, that like I'm not sure that it's a great place. I'm not at a firm decision here yet either. This is like a long-term discussion and discernment and everything. But
you could sway him, Claire. You could sway him.
Honestly, I think you
have so much power right now.
I'm just at this place where I'm like, I'm not sure that even being present, like it feels like by using it in some way, it's an endorsement. And I don't know if I really want to make that endorsement unless it's like really clear. This is only something for adults to use. Like I don't have an issue. I'm not a prohibitionist, right? I don't have an issue if somebody wants to have a drink. I enjoy a Guinness as much as anybody. I'll smoke a cigar with you if you want. I don't mind that kind of stuff. But like I would never say this is a good idea for children.
Right.
No,
Yes.
no, this is not something for children. It's not okay. And I think
That's right.
You get at some great things here. Let's look at the very end of your book. You get at some great things here, talking about the importance of trying to address this at a higher level so that parents have some support, like in the legal arena, that they can get some support from their legislature and from lawmakers. Tell us a little bit about some of those efforts.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you raised that because I do recognize that in the book that there are certain aspects of the problem that are really difficult for parents to completely address on their own. And there actually is a place for law to provide some of these collective solutions that parents need. And so one of the primary things I just talk about is like if the country just raised the age of social media, Australia has done this. And so they've raised their age to 16 for social media. I think I would love to see even like 18. Like that just provides a collective solution where every parent then isn't having to fight that individual battle. They can just say, hey, it's nationally like no kids on social media. We've done age restrictions on other harmful products, tobacco, alcohol, even driving cars. I mean, owning or operating a firearm. There are technologies that we recognize are just harmful for kids to use. And so we've put those age restrictions. So I think I do want to talk about public policy solutions. That's why I address that at the end of the book to say, parents, if you want to be engaged on this issue, there are things to advocate for to your lawmakers on this, where you can help them provide these collective solutions that all parents need.
Yeah, you start talking about Section 230 in your book, and Section 230 sounds at first like Area 51. It's conspiracy theory, right? And then it's actually a thing that's kind of baked into law that it sounds like it's meant to protect from frivolous lawsuits or something like that. But I didn't fully understand what it was. So I was just wondering, because it seems like the kind of thing that if you get it right, if you interpret it correctly, can actually be used as a tool to help to get laws passed that will protect children from the tech companies, from the social media stuff, from all of this. But misinterpreted will continue to let these companies just do whatever they want and harm children.
Yeah, this is actually, I think, important for people to pay attention to, because a lot of time I get questions, well, this is ridiculous. Like, why aren't people just suing these social media companies? It's clearly harming kids, which that's kind of what happened with big tobacco. That's what's happened with other kind of issues where consumers are being harmed by private companies, that their products are actually harming consumers or harming children. What's been uniquely challenging for internet companies is this law, Section 230, which again, I don't expect the average parent to have paid attention to this, but it was passed in 1996. So if you think about that, that's like the nascent age of the internet. There is no social media in sight at this point. And it basically just said that if you're acting as an internet or interactive computer service, which back then were like blogs or people hosting different kind of content on their sites, you can't be treated as the speaker of that content. You're just a host. And so you wouldn't be liable if the speech, on that platform, someone else's speech that you're hosting, was doing harm to somebody. And so it was supposed to protect people from what they call like publisher liability, where, if you're publishing something, you can be held responsible for it. These internet platforms were like, we're not really publishers because we just make our service available. People are just posting things on there. We don't want to be sued if harm comes from this. But that law also had a Good Samaritan provision, which was to say, if you as a company notice, though, there's obscene or violent or harassing or lewd or lascivious kind of content being posted on your platform, you will be protected if you take it down. It was like a positive censorship provision to basically say a user then can't sue you. If you take down this content, you're protected because you are doing a service to everyone by taking down something that's obscene. What's happened, unfortunately, is the way the law has been interpreted has essentially immunized these internet companies from anything, even things that are their own wrongdoing. So yes, like they will just try to frame everything as, oh, but that's not our content. Someone else posted that on our platform, and that's why the kid was harmed. And so they're not taking any ownership for things that are their product design, which this law was never meant to protect them from things for like the things that are addictive in the design of the product, or their algorithms, which are matching predators to children or promoting content into kids' feeds. It's not just like, oh, but they came across this thing on their platform and that wasn't something we posted. So-and-so posted that terrible video. And it's like, yeah, but your algorithm fed that directly into that child's feed. So you should have some responsibility for that. So unfortunately, the nature of the internet has changed, and that law has been misinterpreted and kind of overly expanded the immunity these companies receive over time. And so I'm encouraged that just in the last year or so, it seems like the courts are starting to correct that interpretation. There's been more lawsuits where the courts have said, actually, you are liable. Section 230 does not get you out of this. This was your product design, or you are responsible for ensuring that child sexual material is taken down from your platform. And so I'm encouraged that the courts, even without any legislative change, may be able to correct some of these errors. And so I'm hopeful about that. But all that to say, that is why there has also been a lot of efforts kind of being called for legal reform to kind of fill some of these gaps and issues that Section 230 has created, where these tech companies, for seriously, like the last, I guess, 2007 was when Facebook kind of came out. The last like 20 years or so have basically had no liability. And I'm serious, like no liability, no accountability. And I think people are now kind of up in arms about that, and it's starting to change. But a lot of how we got to this point is because of Section 230. A lot of the lawsuits were just dismissed by the court, saying under Section 230, you're protected. And so that's why it's important to know about the law, and it's important to understand, why has social media been so different as an industry, like a predatory industry? How have they not been held accountable for so many of their harms to kids? Whereas like it was a lot easier to hold big tobacco accountable. And the answer really is this law, Section 230.
Awesome. It's awesome to hear that there's actual change occurring.
Yeah, I think because
and
of
also
the
a
place,
relief.
Yes, because of the place that we've gotten to, I think really it's been untenable to say, okay, wait a second, somewhere here the companies have to bear some responsibility. It can't just all be third-party content causing this harm. They play some role through their product design and their algorithms, and they know exactly what they're doing. They are feeding this stuff up to people accounts that they know are minors. And so they should have liability for that.
Right. That's the I mean, I love the way you put it there. They know exactly what they're doing. There is some element of malice involved in this. So I have a bit of an unrelated question. I know that we're nearing the end here, and we're grateful for your time.
Yeah,
that said,
that's fine.
My wife asked me to ask you a question, so I have to ask this question.
Oh, then you have to ask it.
That's
of
right.
course.
That's right. So we've been talking about how I have a Wise phone. She's in the process of transitioning to a Wise phone. And so we're deeply interested in this idea. However, her family, so we're in Stamford. I'm in Stamford, Connecticut. Father Sam is in Fairfield, Connecticut. But she's from Pittsburgh. So her family, her parents are out there. And so one of the aspects of technology that is most beneficial for our family life is the ability to FaceTime,
Sure.
And so she was wondering, all things considered, right? Excel is not the same thing as watching Netflix, which is not the same thing as watching YouTube, which is not the same thing as Instagram. Where does FaceTime fall on that spectrum? Is there any are there any studies that indicate, anything there?
Okay, I will just say I get asked this question a lot, and I think obviously with all the talk about how addictive screens are, then I think parents start to get nervous about like, okay, but we are FaceTiming the relatives, and I would say I think that's actually one of the positive, probably best uses of this technology is to actually strengthen family relationships, especially who are farther away. I have not come across anything that is saying like, oh, FaceTime is addictive. I think especially because it's so often parent mediated, like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old toddler is not calling the grandparents by themselves. And so I personally would say like that is actually probably one of the better uses of this technology. And I've not encountered anything saying that it's addictive to kids. I will say like, I think the bigger the screen, the better. We try to mainly do FaceTime on like a larger screen format. So it's not such a small kind of individualized sucking them into the phone type of situation. And we don't do it every day, but I would say we probably call my parents, my kids' grandparents, like once or twice a week. And it's great. And it actually allows my kids to talk and have a relationship with their grandparents. And the video call is nice because then they show, hey, grandma, I painted this picture today. And they can actually show her things. And so those would be I would just say I really wouldn't lose sleep over FaceTime. I think it's actually a pretty positive use. And I would just say, the bigger the screen, the better. And I would just encourage parents to be involved, in that process. Again, not just sending the toddler off somewhere with the tablet to talk to grandma, where then they're kind of isolated on their own. And you're like, I don't really know what they're doing. And they're playing around on the screen by themselves. We don't do that, I promise. We are responsible adults.
It
is crazy to me how quickly, though, the kids intuit things on the screen. Because like, if we are FaceTiming and my kid all of a sudden wants to grab the screen, I'm like, whoa, what video did you pull up to share with grandma? Like, it's like all these apps even like have ways that you can be doing these other social media components, like share a YouTube video and watch this right now. And you're like, I do not want to do that. I'm just trying to talk to my parents. And so I do think just parental involvement, but I wouldn't lose sleep over FaceTime. I think it's actually pretty good use of the technology.
And one of the things that you've been using the words public and it was purposeful. 2 P's and purposeful, right? So if you're following that model, then the way that you're going to set the hardware up is in a public space, and so it shouldn't really be an issue as far as them walking away anyway. And so hopefully the solution is built into the way that you've set us, I guess, have set it up.
No, I think that's right. Yeah.
And that's good to know. Because I actually think that would be a hurdle for a lot of people. I know it would be a hurdle for us.
Yeah. And the other rule I kind of mentioned in the book that these families adopt is just that like screen entertainment is sparing and shared. Because I also get asked that question a lot. Like, are you anti like a Friday night family movie night? And I'm like, actually, I'm really not, because I think there are ways that screens can be used to bring families together, especially if you're picking like a pretty high quality movie that you're going to sit down and enjoy as a family experience on a quite like large shared screen. I think there can actually be value in that. And so I think, again, staying away from the kind of daily, here's your screen time on your tablet that's very individualized and becomes this kind of daily habit is dangerous. But screen entertainment, that's a family movie night on the weekends or a sporting event on a Saturday, a dad's watching a football game with his sons, that's sparing and it's shared. And I think the principle of it being shared is the screen is actually being used to bring the family together. Whereas they're like so often now with the smartphones and the tablets, the screen's just separating family. Everyone is on their own device with their own individualized entertainment. And so I think, again, as you'll see in the book, it's very strongly against smartphones and social media and kind of individualized tablets or video games for kids, but it's not completely anti-tech. It tries to make a place for kids to learn how to use technology wisely in the home with parents using the computer and the internet as a tool, or even using a television, a form of kind of screen entertainment as a family shared experience that brings the family together. So I kind of give those screen time rules in one of the chapters to help parents make some of the decisions that you're talking about, like with FaceTime. There are a lot of those kind of little decisions we might have to make, and hopefully those guiding principles help parents do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. It makes room for art, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
art
right.
exists, and not all technological art is, evil.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Claire, I'm so grateful for what you're doing here. I think that the tech exit should be mandatory reading for any and all parents who have children in school. It should be mandatory reading for anybody who's an educator. And I'm just really grateful that you're doing this work and leading the way. If you want more ideas for how you and your family can adopt the tech exit, or how you can maybe not just at the very local communal level get involved, but also at a bigger national level, a collective level like that, well, you should pick up yourself a copy of the tech exit. Get a hard copy. Don't do what Matt did. Don't just download it on an e-reader. Pick up your hard copy.
I'm grateful to Penguin Random House for sending me a review copy. Just to be very clear.
Claire, I'm so grateful for what you're doing. We will link in our show notes here to information about you and your Substack and everything else.
Great.
But keep doing this great work. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, thank you guys so much for having me on. And I will just mention for parents, for resources, the techexit.com. I also made a discussion guide to accompany the book. It's like a PDF download. So if you want to read it with people at your church, your school, your neighborhood, so you can actually talk to other parents and implement these practices together, I would just recommend that guide. And I also have a practical tip sheet for parents with like screen-free activities you can do with your kids instead. Because I know as parents, we are all busy and sometimes lacking in inspiration or creativity. And so hopefully those two resources are also a nice accompaniment to the book. And you can find all of that on the techexit.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much. This was great. Yeah. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
I think we needed 2 hours.
Yeah, it could have gone.
Oh my
goodness. Could have gone
goodness.
for much longer. I want you to know that I was very tempted to start the outro with "Welcome to the outro," just as a throwback.
She is doing such amazing work, and it's so important. And there's so much more here that we didn't even get to cover.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make sure that we could come back on and say that there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah.
Because oh my goodness, just the strategies that she suggests for families are actually really doable. And we didn't even get to scratch the surface of some of that. I think there's we need to highlight the dangers. I want people to know about that and to hear that this isn't just like some religious rejection of all technology or something.
Right.
There's
Not to mention the fact that the book is filled with anecdotal evidence. Right. So like the one that shocked me the most was that in an effort to describe how predators reach children through smartphones, there was a whole scandal where the Bible app, right? You used to be able to send a Bible verse with a unique picture that you upload to the app.
Yeah.
And predators were convincing children to send bad photos, we'll say it like that, right? To them via the Bible app, right? So even something as innocent as that, right? It's not free from dangers.
No, it's the amount of stuff that's out there and the different ways that it can be abused is amazing. But here's the thing. I think she does a great job. You're right. She's collected tons of great anecdotes so that it illustrates the point. But those are really just, she uses anecdotes exactly the right way as just a way to illustrate the point. The data, the research that she has done, that like the research that is underneath all of this, it's deep, it's significant. She has gone through all the studies that have been done. And the thing I think that we forget is we've just kind of accepted this as a technology. We haven't ever thought of it, and now we're starting to see the dangers, and so now the studies are coming out, and none of the studies are good, none of them,
right?
And so it's not just a question of it seems like this isn't a good idea. It is objectively, it's demonstrable now that having smartphones in school is bad for students. It does not help them learn. Over-reliance on screens is bad for educational outcomes. Then the use of social media by children and minors, it's damaging to their self-esteem. It's damaging to their sense of self. It's causing anxiety. It's causing depression. And it's not just a correlation. There's actually causation there. Everything is pointing in this direction. So the idea that like we would give our kids this stuff it just has to be completely foreign to us, but we also need that support. And so she gives some great advice. She's got a great acronym, FEAST, about finding other people, engaging, doing all this like to get other people together within your community, within your school, so that parents know that they're not alone as they do it. And then she also talks about advocating at a higher level. We'll throw some links in the show notes here for it. But folks, do yourself a favor, pick up the Tech Exit and read it all the way through. It is amazing. It is really important. And this is a way forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, that's my end of speech.
That's
I'm
the
sorry.
outro.
That's it. That's the outro. Yeah. Hey,
All
thanks,
right.
Matt.
It's my pleasure. See you soon.
Peace.
Peace. Thanks for watching today's video. Let us know what you thought down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.